Uh, I was going to, speak about our legislation and so on, but as I got nearer to the conference and I saw and became aware of some of the issues which were coming up, and in particular this decision of the Supreme Court, I suddenly decided, and I'm a curse of conference organisers, I decided to write something totally different. And the paper I've written, and I presume it will be circulated, is called The Rise of Urban Romanticism, or The New Road to Serfdom. In other words, I'm sure we're all sitting here watching a lot of this stuff and saying, what the hell is going on here? And I'm going to try and explain to you, as best I can, what the hell is going on here. I could have called the paper Know Your Enemy, because I think our big mistake is we don't understand who the enemy is and what they believe. And once you do, a whole lot of things become clear. I'm carrying on some papers I've given elsewhere on my contention, well, not just mine, but the real debate that has been going on since the 18th century is between two great traditions, ways of thought. The Enlightenment tradition, I presume we're all aware of that, based on reason, science, the individual, rational thought, progress, etc. On the other side is Romanticism. Rousseau is most famous, although it actually originates in Germany. This, of course, worships nature more than man, and believes in passion and beliefs rather than reason, and that art is the highest form of human activity as opposed to science. Now, the dark side of the Enlightenment tradition is socialism, because it's easy to believe that if you can design a bridge, you can design Europe, and you can design society. And that's what the socialists believe. They believe that through reason we can plan, because otherwise the world is so complex that it will descend into chaos, so you need planners. The dark side of Romanticism is fascism. Now, unfortunately, that's been made an F word in the United States and nobody wants to mention it. But it's a real belief system. So you've got fascism from Romanticism, socialism from the Enlightenment. When you bring the two of them together, you actually have the communism as in the Soviet bloc and China and so on, because what fascism brings into socialism is also the charismatic leader. Because you've got to have the charismatic leader who shows the way forward and interprets whatever the book happens to be. Now, they all, both and the third, presume that spontaneous order doesn't work, that you need wise people to tell the rest of us how to live. And there are many people who are happy to be planned, and of course many who are willing to do the planning. The present generation of controllers has identified a new source of chaos, and that, of course, is the environment. If you're not planned, we're all going to burn in global warming hell. Put it up down. And part of that response to managing the environment is smart growth. Now, with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of those communist fascist empires, I think, people thought, well, that's the end of the debate, we've won. But all we've won, we've defeated the dark side of socialism. We haven't actually beaten the dark side of Romanticism. And because we've all thought we've won, we've all gone away and said, well, the world's fine, the Romantic movement and its dark side is naturally enough surfacing. And where it is being expressed par excellence is through smart growth. Socialism, after all, of course, focused on the economy, and it believed in rational processing planning. It was forward-looking. To the socialists, the past was a bad time. We're moving towards a good utopia. Fascism is quite different. It's primarily an aesthetic model. You design the world, you don't plan it. And they would prefer to rely on feelings and emotions to guide them and the wisdom of the primitives. And they worship nature. And while it is not econocentric, the socialists write a lot about the economy. the fascists hardly write anything about the economy, but there is one fascist who wrote about the economy. His name was List. He was a German. And what he said was, well, the socialists want to own it all. We don't think that's right. You should all own your private property, but only as long as you are serving the purposes of the state. And if we think we can do better, we can take it off you. And that's what the Supreme Court has just endorsed as List's fascist economics. I think somebody should remind them of that. So what we have now is in most of the debate that's going on in the world, you'll see that Romanticism is actually dominating the discussion. The Romantic movement gives great weight to the arts and artists, the charismatic leader. But just think back to Nazi Germany. When you look at the role of Albert Speer to Hitler, it's impossible to think of any architect having that relationship to Churchill or Roosevelt. Roosevelt would go out and talk to engineers by a dam or something. But you know, in Hitler's last hours, he was there with Speer designing the great city, moving blocks around. Now, if you look at some of the debates going on now, you've got Naomi Klein going on about logos on the sort of left. You've got Virginia Postel talking about design. Television shows are full of how to make over your house, how to make over your garden. Michael Jackson reshapes his face to look like, what's the name of the singer? Anyhow. Style now determines status more than wealth, if only because status is now more scarce than money. So artists and architects are attracted to fascism. They're romantics. And they tend to share the fascist conviction that society is a canvas on which great leaders or other visionaries can impose their grand designs. These are not plans, they're designs. So they put the red bits there and the green bits there, and they have clean barriers, you know, so they have urban boundaries. These architectural visionaries see themselves as great artists using people and resources to create their vision of an ideal world. Now again, remember the Enlightenment tradition has a positive attitude to the future. The Romantics don't. To them, the golden age is always in the past. They look backwards for solutions. And of course, new urbanism is looking backwards for solutions. They look backwards to transport, they come to trains. They really are very uncomfortable with modern technology in the future.
Why don't they go back to canals?
Yeah, well, I mean, can I just get some more, please? I think the canal is not the right symbol. The train has always been a very powerful symbol in revolutionary thought.
It's true.
It's also sexy. I think one of the reasons why planning boards love trains is those long, shiny tubes plunging into deep, dark tunnels. You know. What's that? Yeah, yeah. So then also you see one of the real dangerous thoughts that comes out of the Romantic tradition is purity, the notion of purity. And so you have to have the pure city now in the pure countryside. You can't have urban activities in the countryside, in a clean boundary. So the contemporary expression of Romanticism, I'm saying, is it's not true fascism because it's sort of international and it doesn't have the big charismatic leader. It doesn't depend, smart growth doesn't depend on some person who builds statues of himself pointing like Saddam Hussein, who seems to be always pointing in a big suitcase full of money, probably. But on the other hand, all these pop stars now play that role.
Yeah.
You know, instead of having the Klieg lights and so on, you have all these kids all swinging with their candle lights. And Bono and them, they do actually get debt cancelled. So they're the ones who now are these charismatic leaders, and they're all romantics. You know, they're nature lovers, save the whales, save the planet, and so on. So now we are faced with a great divide. The traditional planners of my time were steeped in the tradition of reason. People who went into planning were typically civil and traffic engineers. urban geographers or surveyors, and the occasional architect interested in the architecture of public space. We were generally mathematically literate. We were interested in the planning and design of infrastructure and managing these conflicts between incompatible uses, the spillover effects and so on. So I'm saying that the planners of my time were and still are enlightened and embedded in the Enlightenment tradition, and I suggest all of you are too. That's why we're here. Because it is a classic liberal tradition. Now there's a problem in language, you know, in English, liberal is Adam Smith libertarian. Here, liberal is being liberal with other people's money. So forgive me if I occasionally make that slip. I'll try and say classic liberal if ever I use that word. And we have to understand when you're talking of a great paradigmatic divide, there's a story of Carlyle walking down a little lane in Scotland with a friend, and up above them out of the two top-story windows, the two women having horrific argument, abusing the hell out of each other. And when they get past, Carlyle says, they'll never agree. They're arguing from different premises. And that's the problem that we're facing. Because when we try to challenge the plans of the urban romantics, we are trying to speak our language to people who totally ignore it. So they've entered the field. This new generation of planners have come into planning not to do the things that we came into. They've come here to save the planet. And they believe in their feelings and emotions, and they're convinced that their feelings are more true than our old-fashioned data and statistics and analysis. Blake, the great English romantic poet and painter, regarded Locke and Newton as the villains of the modern movement because they killed the spirit by cutting reality into some kind of mathematically symmetrical pieces.
Who said that?
Blake.
Oh, Blake.
And he said, art is the tree of life, science is the tree of death. So just, you've got to remember, the romantic disdains all the stuff that we produce. Just doesn't not understand it. They're hostile to it. The 19th century anonymous French jingle says, obedience is sweet to the vile heart of the classicists. They always have someone as a model or as a law. But an artist must listen only to his own self, and pride alone fills romantic souls. And that's in new evidence, in smart growth theory. I know what's best. I don't need data. You come along with all your data. You expect them to have data? No, they just know. In fact, they regard you as an enslaved by this evil tradition. So this attitude helps explain the urban romantics' refusal to be bound by the language of legislation. The law to them is no more than a novel which you cut and paste to get what you want out of it. But in their views, no artist can be constrained by the niceties of law. Their freedom of expression must be absolute. And of course, because they have disdain for science, they are absolutely prepared and willing to corrupt science to give them the outcomes that they want. So when they do their surveys, if they don't get the right results, they just cook the books until they do. And it doesn't bother them at all. Because that's always been the attitude of the romantics. And of course, economic theory, well, it's similarly to constraining. It is a discipline after all. And the very idea of cost-benefit analysis is offensive because you cannot put a price on the environment. So in my day, we planned systems and applying rigorous methods of analysis to the design of transport, drainage, and other systems. But today's urban romantics go out and they say to the people, and you'll hear it all the time, what do you want your town or city to look like in 50 years' time? What do you want it to look like? And once you tell us what you want it to look like, mind you, to help you, we'll give you 3 pictures. And you choose the one that you want. And you know, they load it, so they always choose the one they want. And then they say, well, that's great. We will now paint that picture for you. So we're asked, you see, these people now create visions. And I can tell you, when politicians get visions, people get nightmares. And yet, you see, when they present those 2 or 3, they overlook the fact that the future actually has an infinite number of outcomes. So what happened to the other infinity minus 3? And how did they get rid of them? That's actually the real debate. How did you get rid of these infinity minus 3? And of course, well, they've done the painting. And what they all do is transfer power from the people to the urban romantics, who will then use those powers to impose their vision on the canvas of the region. The rest of us has to do as we are told, and suffer the costs. But they don't care because they're not interested in costs. When did you last hear a smart growth planner express real concern for or even refer to housing affordability? So we authorise them to paint the picture, and we are reduced to blobs of paint on the artist's palette. And Isaiah Berlin said this in one of his essays on Romanticism. He said, the whole Romantic movement, indeed, is an attempt to impose an aesthetic model upon reality, to say that everything should obey the rules of art. For artists, indeed, perhaps some of the claims of Romanticism may appear to have a great deal of validity, but their attempt to convert life into art presupposes that human beings are stuff, that they are simply a kind of material, even as paints or sounds are a kind of material. And we can be quite certain that left to their own devices, the people will not settle into any one of these 3 or 4 landscapes, and so they have to make us go where we don't want to go. As you say, all second best decisions. And because they're oriented to the past, they want to re-centralise everything. That's why they want to re-centralise it. I don't think it's central planning, it's just that it used to be centralised. So that's what we should do. Whereas the whole thrust of modern technology and human behaviour is to decentralise. And I go then through some of the things that they really do seriously wrong in their surveys. But anyhow, what I'm saying is, how do we respond to this? I mean, I don't want you to all go home and give up. But the other great flaw of the Romantic movement, particularly in its dark side, is that it is absolutely elitist. They decide on the paint and they start painting. And they talk to each other, but it has nothing to do with what ordinary people out there really want. And it seems to me that the regular people are smarter than the smart growth people. You know, they all will go along and vote for one of these visions, saying they want intensification and a vibrant community, whatever the hell that is. But then when the big building goes up next door, they say, hey, we didn't want that. And they say, oh yes you did, here's the meeting. No, you showed us those pictures of people drinking coffee outside on the Champs-Élysées. We didn't want this place. Eh? So I think we keep generating our stream of facts and figures because in the end we will provide a better fit with the world. We'll be proved right. Their visions don't work, they prove wrong. I mean, look at that train. We were out there on a station at 10 to 9, still rush hour, nobody on the platform. I think Blind Freddy's dog can see there's something wrong here. But nothing will change as long as the planning schools keep turning out new generations of urban romantics, but I don't think we can reform them. I think we have to get trained people coming out of other disciplines, Enlightenment disciplines. And we go eventually to the public. Eventually when the public sees what is happening, I think they'll vote out the people who are delivering this. And then you have to go in and point out to the politicians, you're here because the last lot were voted out, but the staff is still here, and as long as they keep doing what they're doing, you'll be voted out too. And we are seeing that happen in New Zealand. And finally, I just want to say that that grassroots revolt translates into a political movement in which the democratic process removes the urban romantics from government and replaces them with those who seek to promote and preserve the genuine American dream. Finally, though, it's not just an American dream, it's all over the world, and this is happening all over the world. And when the people are given their choices, their preferences are remarkably similar. And that's why many of us have travelled so far to share our experiences with you here. We're all fighting the same fight. So Randall's not here, but I thank him for inviting us. And I just hope that after hearing this, you'll now see what's going on and why, when you go to a meeting with your analysis, they don't have any. Because they're artists.